Okay, let's start with an explanation of some of the terminology that I'm going to use in this demonstration of a problems and solutions style IELTS Writing Task 2 essay. So let's start by looking at the question. So the question we're looking at is, in the developed world, average life expectancy is increasing. What problems will this cause for the individuals and society? Suggest some measures that could be taken to reduce the impact of aging populations. So measures that could be taken to reduce the impact means solutions. And the problems they're talking about is the fact that average life expectancy is increasing, the population is aging. Okay, so IELTS Task 2 questions can always be broken down into two main parts. Now, different people will refer to these two main parts in different ways, but for our purposes, I'm going to call them the statement and the task. So the statement could be a statement of opinion. For example, many people believe that computers have made us more lazy. Or the statement may be a statement of fact, like in this case, in the developed world, average life expectancy is increasing. The statement basically gives us the topic that we're going to make an argument about. The task needs to be read really carefully, and it will fall into one of the categories of IELTS Task 2 writing. It could be, to what extent do you agree? It could be, discuss both views and give your opinion. It might be a two-part question, which we'll talk about in another video as well. In this case, the task says, what problems will this cause for individuals and society? Suggest some measures that could be taken to reduce the impact of aging populations. Now, one trap that people often fall into is simply reading the statement and not reading the task properly. If you just read the statement here, in the developed world, average life expectancy is increasing, you might write an essay arguing whether this is a positive or negative trend. If you didn't carefully read the task and realize that's not what they're asking you here. This is not about arguing an opinion on one side or another. It is about suggesting some problems and giving solutions to that. Okay, so let's look at the content of this essay. In this demonstration, you'll see in my planning, I come up with multiple reasons why average life expectancy is increasing. I call those P1, P2, P3, etc. Those are the problems that I've come up with. I also need to come up with solutions to those problems, ideally solutions which are matched specifically to the problems that I have identified. So in my demonstration, when I'm talking about these solutions, I'll refer to these as S1, S2, S3, etc. I'll also use the word argument when I'm talking you through my planning and my writing. And when I say argument here, I mean a problem with its causes and impacts and its solutions. So in this essay, one argument is one problem with its solution. Okay, let's talk about paragraphing. So in this demonstration, I'm going to write a 4-paragraph essay. It's going to have an introduction, a conclusion at the end, and all of my arguments are going to fit into 2 main body paragraphs. Within each paragraph, you can see that I will introduce each argument using reasonably simple short sentences and develop the argument using longer sentences with more complex grammar. This is a good way to incorporate more advanced, more complex grammar without the reader losing themselves and not being able to find their way through your essay. So last point to make is, what kind of language are we expected to use when we write a problems and solutions essay? Of course, we want to focus on tenses. Of course, we might try to incorporate uses of the passive voice if necessary. Of course, we want to be very careful about making sure that all of our subjects match grammatically with our verbs. For example, a sentence like people sees this as a big problem, very common mistake, and most people know it's a mistake, but we need to be careful that we are matching the verb form to the subject. People see this as a problem. But what kind of language and grammar and vocabulary is very specific to a problems and solutions essay? Well, it's all of the language of cause and effect, right? So I'll talk about 3 different ways of expressing cause and effect here. They're not the only ones, but these are very useful structures to incorporate into an essay where you're talking about problems and solutions. So firstly, we'll talk about linkers. You might know these as conjunctions. These words, so, thanks to, therefore, due to, as a result of, because. If I put one of these words into a sentence, you can see that the function of these words is to link cause and effect, right? I'm thirsty, so I drink some water. The cause is I'm thirsty, the result is I drink water. I'm studying IELTS because I need it for university. University is the cause, IELTS is the result. We can also use verbs to express the same function. Pollution results from industry. Industry is the cause, pollution is the result. Or in the case of problems and solutions, education will lead to a reduction in obesity. Education is the cause and a reduction in obesity is the result. Another really useful type of structure is a conditional. I'll make an entirely separate video on conditionals, and you may have had lessons on this with your teacher. A conditional is a structure using if and when to link 2 ideas with cause and effect. Now there's 4 basic types of conditional. They're called the 0, first, second and third conditional. But if we include mixing elements of both of those, you could argue there may be up to 5 of those. In this essay, I'm going to use conditionals to link cause and effect, particularly when I'm suggesting solutions to my problems. Okay, so let's look at the process for planning and writing this IELTS Task 2 essay on problems and solutions. Now, the first thing I want to say is think of 3 to 4 problems associated with the statement. Now, you've probably noticed already that's too many to put into this essay. But you need to remember the first idea that you come up with to answer this question will not necessarily be your best idea. If you can think of 3 reasons or 4 reasons why the aging population is a problem, I want you to think about the causes of that problem and the impacts of these problems, as well as possible solutions. So think about what causes these problems, think about what impact these problems have, and think about solutions. And when you're thinking about the solutions, think, does this solution address the cause of this problem? Does it address the impact of this problem? So once you've got your 3 or 4 problems and you've thought of solutions to these problems, as well as the causes and impacts, and whether these solutions address the cause of the problem or the impact of the problem, you want to eliminate 1 or 2 of them so that you only have your 2 strongest arguments left. You're going to get rid of the weakest of your arguments and just go with the ones that you can say most about, the ones that you can argue most confidently. Now, once you've got that, you can decide on your structure. And there's 2 possible structures that you can use for this, right? Now, both of them begin with an introduction, both of them end with a conclusion. Where A and B differ is in the main body, right? And you can see that in A, all of the problems appear in the same paragraph, main body 1. So after the introduction, we have 1 paragraph which is going to outline the first reason why the aging population is a problem, 1 paragraph which is going to outline why the second reason why it's a 1 paragraph which is going to outline the second reason why aging population is a problem. You're going to move on to a new paragraph and you're going to talk about the solutions to both of those problems. Now, the advantage of structure A is it has greater clarity. So if you know that you often lose marks or you're often penalized for cohesion and coherence. If your teacher often says to you, it's sometimes difficult to follow your arguments, I sometimes get lost in your writings, in that case, it's probably a good idea to follow this structure and to be really clear when you're talking about a problem, and in the second main body paragraph when you're talking about a solution, or the solutions. So that's structure A. Structure B is slightly more complex, but in many ways it's a better way to answer this type of question. And you can see the difference. In the first main body paragraph, we have the first problem with its solution. In the second main body paragraph, we have the second problem with its solution. Now, the advantage here is the solutions you're suggesting are much more closely matched to the problems you've identified, and that is a great strength. The danger, though, again, is that if you're not very clear in your sentencing and in your paragraphing, it can sometimes be difficult for the reader when they're reading through to know when you're talking about a problem, when you're talking about a solution, when the solution you're talking about is designed to match the first or the second problem. It's easier to get lost in an essay like this. So it's up to you. If you know that cohesion and coherence is a challenge for you, follow the first structure. A. If you know that you're confident with structuring essays and you want to do something a bit more complex, you really want to link your problems and solutions to each other, follow structure B here, because in that structure, in your main body paragraphs, the problems are matched to their solutions. Now, once you've done that, you can start writing. And it doesn't matter if you're following structure A or structure B. You're going to start with an introduction, which I'll do in the demonstration. You need to paraphrase the statement, not the whole question, the statement. Paraphrase the statement, and you want to reference the task in your introduction there. Now, you don't need to give an opinion here because remember, this is not an opinion essay. This is problems and solutions. But what you do want to do in that second sentence of your introduction is just make reference to the task, which is problems and solutions. So I'm going to say something like, this essay will discuss some of the problems associated with this and suggest solutions to these problems. So suggest things that governments and society can do to deal with this problem, right? Somehow reference the task by mentioning problems and solutions. Okay, now main body, as I mentioned before, it depends whether you're following structure A or structure B. If you're following structure A, remember you're putting all of your problems in the same paragraph in main body 1. So I'm going to introduce my first problem, develop my first problem, introduce my second problem, develop my second problem, and then in main body 2, in my second main body paragraph, I'm going to introduce the first solution, develop that solution, introduce the second solution, develop that. Structure B, as we mentioned before, puts first set of problems with the first set of solutions, the second set of problems with the second set of solutions. But in the same way, you can see, I'll try to demonstrate when I'm doing this writing, I don't simply go in with lots of complex sentences explaining a problem. First, I begin by introducing the problem at the beginning or at the middle of each paragraph to be clear to the examiner. It's particularly important, if you're following structure B, to be clear to the examiner when you're moving between talking about a problem and talking about its solution. Okay, so something else that I just want to demonstrate when I'm doing this in terms of language is the cause and effect language that we mentioned before and where I'm likely to use them. So linkers and verbs, as I mentioned in the introduction, those are really good, really useful phrases to use when developing your problem, when you're talking about the causes and impacts of your problem, right? So if I'm following structure A, you can see that those are going to be in the first main body paragraph. And a conditional sentence, those if-style sentences, those are really good when you talk about solutions. When we suggest a solution, for example, we should raise the retirement age, you're able to support that by saying, if people are able to work for longer, there will be more funds available to support them in older age, for example. There's a conditional sentence that you showed off. So that might appear, if you're following structure A, that those conditionals particularly are going to appear in the second main body paragraph. If you're following structure B, you're still going to use this language, cause and effect language, particularly linkers and verbs, when you're developing your problem 1, and conditionals really good for developing solutions. So can you see there, if you follow structure B, you're going to have cause and effect language and probably a conditional in the first main body paragraph, and then the same thing repeated in the second main body paragraph. Cause and effect language, linkers, verbs to develop the problem that you've said, and conditionals as well as other cause and effect language to develop the solutions that you're suggesting. Okay, once we've done that, we get to the conclusion. In the conclusion, all you need to do is reference back to the task again, show that you've spoken about problems and solutions. If you followed structure B, the conclusion is a useful place to talk about the difference between your first problem and solution and your second problem and solution. For example, you might say in the first main body paragraph why it is a problem for the individual or for the elderly people themselves, with solutions for them. And in the second main body paragraph, you might have spoken about what governments and society can do about this problem, or why it's a burden, why it's a problem for governments and society, and what governments and society can do about it. So when you get to the conclusion, you can reference that as well. As we can see, there are numerous problems associated with the trend for populations to grow older. However, if individuals and governments take steps to ease these problems, they may not cause such difficulties in the future. Something like that. Okay, let's move on and demonstrate the process to go through when planning and writing an IELTS Task 2 Problems and Solutions essay. Okay, so how do we plan? Remember, we need to come up with at least 3 solutions to the problem, right? We're going to eliminate the worst of these, so let's come up with any ideas and then we'll decide which are the strongest arguments. I'm going to talk about the health service. I'm going to talk about housing. Average life expectancy is increasing. I'm going to talk about families getting smaller. Now I need to think about the causes and the impact that this problem is happening. Why is this a problem for the health service? Older people require more health care. So my solution there is going to be more facilities for older people to maintain good health. More facilities for older people to maintain good health. So the government can spend money building special exercise facilities, special places where elderly people can meet to manage their own mental health issues as well. If elderly people can stay healthy for longer, then it costs less to take care of them for longer in our hospitals. I'm going to talk about housing, and I'm going to suggest that older people may stay in large family homes, so not so many homes available for young families. My solution that I'm going to suggest there is specialist housing for the elderly, so that they no longer want to live in large family homes. They're happy to vacate those and perhaps share, if they own those properties and sell them, they may want to share that with younger generations in their family, or they may want to pass those houses to younger generations in their family so they can live in retirement communities which are better suited to their needs and alleviate the burden on the housing stock, so that younger families are able to live in, or larger families are able to live in the bigger accommodation. I might also talk about how this might affect families getting smaller, and there I would suggest that because the working population needs to care for the elderly, there's no time for families of their own. Okay. Most notably, if a couple have elderly relatives to take care of, both partners in that couple are going to need to maintain a job in order to support those people. That means there's going to be less time for having children. Looking at this, as I mentioned, I want to eliminate one of these because all these three arguments is really too many to put into a 250-word essay. So for me, looking through, I'm going to get rid of the one about families getting smaller. I'm going to focus specifically on the health service and housing in my answer. Based on this, I'm pretty confident that I can write a well-structured essay. So rather than talk about all of my problems together in one paragraph, in the first main body paragraph, and all of my solutions in a second main body paragraph, I'm going to talk about the problems and solutions in relation to the health service in my first main body paragraph, and the problems and solutions in terms of housing in my second main body paragraph. Okay, so I'm ready to start writing. Remember, in the introduction, I want to paraphrase the question in my introductory statement. So they say, in the developed world, average life expectancy is increasing. Problems, measures, I like individuals and society as well. I might just use that directly as it is. Okay, so these days, in fact, let's say this. Let's start with the noun phrase. The growing trend, no. The global pattern of population aging shows no sign of slowing in the developed world in the modern age. Okay, now I want to reference the question, make a note that this is problems and solutions. So this has become a major area of concern for governments and policymakers around the world. This essay seeks to identify some of the main issues associated with this trend and to suggest steps that can be taken to mitigate its impact on individuals and society, on individuals. Individuals and society. Okay, introduction done. Remember, I'm going to talk about my first main body paragraph, a problem and a solution associated with the health service. And remember, also we're trying to follow a pattern where we introduce an idea and then develop an idea. So I want a simple statement to begin with to explain my idea, and then I'll develop that further. So my simple statement will be one of the main concerns related to aging population is the burden this places on the national healthcare provision. So a simple statement which introduces the idea, and I can now elaborate that. And remember, we're going to use cause and effect language here as much as possible. People who live for a long time after retirement may need extensive medical support in their old age. This may lead to a crisis as the healthcare service committed to a crisis where the healthcare service is unable to keep up with demand. Let's say this: the healthcare system is unable to keep up with demand for its services. In terms of solutions to this for individuals, is that the most obvious solution to this is to increase funding, increase state funding for healthcare, while also providing services and facilities which support the elderly to take good care of their own health. Providing services and facilities such as gyms and community centres which support the elderly to take good care of their own health. Remember, as I mentioned before, a good way to end your paragraph which talks about solutions, or a good way to summarize, is using a conditional sentence. So if older people can enjoy a healthy lifestyle, they are less likely to require state medical support, and the increased funding for this can be targeted to those most in need. Okay, next, main body paragraph. Here we're going to talk about a problem and a solution in terms of housing. So, another issue associated with this trend. Another issue associated with this trend is the, have I said burden already? Yes, burden is its impact on the housing market. Many elderly people choose to go on living in their large family homes, leaving rooms unoccupied. Leaving many rooms unoccupied. At the same time, younger families may be struggling to find accommodation big enough to suit their family needs. Okay, remember we are saying one sentence or a simple sentence which explains the a simple sentence which introduces an idea, and then more complex sentences which develop that idea. So again, we want a simple sentence here to explain that we're going to talk about solutions to this. So to solve this problem, governments should provide specialist housing facilities suited to the needs of the elderly. Okay, no, that's fine. And I'm going to use a conditional again. If older people can be encouraged to move into retirement, moved into comfortable retirement communities, larger houses will be vacated and become available for the larger families who need them. Okay, I can move on to my conclusion. In conclusion, and as I said, remember we want to reference the fact that this is about problems and solutions, and because I've followed structure B, I can also reference how I've divided the two paragraphs according to healthcare and according to housing. So in conclusion, there are many problems associated with the increase in life expectancy. Not least among these are the impact it will have on healthcare and housing. Steps therefore need to be taken to address these issues now in order to ensure that these problems are not exacerbated in the future. Okay, word count. It's quite long, 361 words. Sorry, no, 329 words, and that's only talking about two problems on either side. So you can see you definitely don't need to talk about more than two arguments in an essay like this. You probably won't have time, and if you're doing that, probably one of your arguments will be a lot weaker than the others. Anyway, so remember to brainstorm your arguments, come up with at least three, and then reduce it by eliminating the least effective of your arguments. Also, very important, always proofread. I'm going to do that now. Look through, see if I can see any places where my verbs are in the wrong tenses. Perhaps I forgot to put an S on the end of a verb where I needed to put an S. Perhaps the subject does not match the verb. For example, the subject may be plural and I'm using a singular version of the verb with it. So scoot through and a quick check in proofreading. Many elderly people, there we go, a spelling mistake, choose. Larger houses will be vacated and become available for the larger families. Larger, larger. More spacious houses will be vacated and become available for larger families who need them. In conclusion, let's put a comma there. In conclusion, there are many problems associated with the increase in life expectancy. Not least among these are the impact it will have on healthcare and housing. Steps therefore need to be taken to address these issues now in order to ensure that these problems are not exacerbated in the future. Okay, finally, let's look through and just see what's standing out here for an examiner. What are they noticing? Firstly, notice the tenses that have been used here. We've got future tenses, so will, where it's used with conditionals, for example. More spacious houses will be vacated. We've got a present perfect tense here at the beginning. This has become a major area of concern. We've also got general present simple tenses. People who live for a long time after retirement may need extensive medical help, etc. So a mixture of tenses there, predominantly present simple, of course, but a mixture of tenses all the same. We've also got conditional sentences. If older people can enjoy a healthy lifestyle, they're less likely to require state medical support, and increased funding for this can be targeted to those most in need. Also, be targeted, that's a passive voice. So all of this falls into the category of what is considered to be complex language. It's not very, very advanced, but when they talk about using complex structures, it's mixing up your tenses effectively. It's using the passive voice where necessary, using conditionals as we've done here. And remember, in a problems and solutions essay, you can almost always use a conditional when you summarize what your solutions are. What about words or phrases that are standing out and earning me points for lexical resource? Well, we can say a major area of concern. That's quite a nice collocation. Policymakers is a very good collocation. To mitigate the impact of a problem. So it means to lessen the impact of a problem. It may not be able to make the problem go away, but it can reduce the impact. It can mitigate the impact. Burden, particularly with place. Place a burden. Retirement. Keep up with demand. State funding, that's a good collocation. Increased funding can be targeted. Unoccupied. To suit their family needs. More spacious. It's avoiding repetition there. Exacerbate. Or not exacerbated, that's in the passive voice as well. So lots of words and phrases there that are really lifting the lexical resource of this this essay. So, as usual, have a go yourselves. Don't forget to check out the PDFs and the quiz materials, which will really help to deepen your understanding of the demonstration as it's been done here. And if you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And subscribe if you like this video for more IELTS uploads.